There was already afoot, planned since the 1950s, a long-term, multi-generational program to hoax a threat from outer space when there is none. So you have people, you would think, who would have knowledge of these issues, and it turns out they do not. And then there are other people who should have nothing to do with something this sensitive, who are running the projects outside constitutional oversight of the President, the Congress, and their appointees, and of we, the people, most importantly. This is why Admiral Roscoe Hillenkoetter, the first CIA director when it was formed in 1947, said in a letter that the secrecy surrounding UFOs was a threat to the national security. This is why Eisenhower said the secrecy could be a threat to our democracy and our way of life. And they were referring to this dynamic. In that vacuum of secrecy, extreme, unacknowledged special access projects, which is what they're called, at a compartmented level, at least 21 levels, compartments, past the level of the President. 21 levels. You have a permanent infrastructure that has evolved and have therefore been given no oversight or restraints so that they could set up a dynamic where they could hoax an alien attack on planet Earth. But the cosmic false flag that I want to talk about is the crown jewel of the secrecy that was hatched in the 50s that led to Eisenhower losing control of these programs. And no president since that time has had full operational access control. They've had knowledge, but not control over these rogue elements. So now we're into a period where these operations have run amok, so much so that it has become an existential threat to life on Earth. And this is something we have to understand what the modus operandi is. What are the means for achieving this goal? The false flag has already happened. Not the crescendo moment, not the final act, but acts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever, have already transpired. What I mean is, these operations figured out that the psychological warfare value of this subject was such that they could set up events that are completely hoaxed, beginning in the 50s and 60s, that would convince people that those events were of extraterrestrial origin, alien, when they were not. And so blur the lines between the actual ET activity and the human stagecraft, as it's called, that most people, including people at the White House, wouldn't know the difference. Werner von Braun, the man who invented the V-2 rocket for Adolf Hitler, and who then was brought in under Operation Paperclip by the OSS into our intelligence community and into our aerospace program after World War II. On his deathbed, he said, look, you know, first they had this plan. There would be the Cold War, when we could have had peace with the Soviet Union. Then there would be nations of concern, and that is the threat from outer space. And it's all a lie. And that's what he kept saying, it's all a lie. That around October 1954, we attained gravity control. So gravity control meaning electromagnetic systems that affect an object so it becomes seemingly weightless, levitates, and corrects for gravity. Now, that research actually began with T. Townsend Brown and others in the 20s, if you look into this. So in October 1954, gravity control was mastered, and we began to build various prototypes of what the public would call UFOs. And some were made to simulate the shape, appearance, and motion of an extraterrestrial vehicle. Because what better way to confuse people than to have something that looks almost the same? Is it gold? Is it fool's gold? So I call those the assets that are material physical craft. There's another category, and this is more difficult to understand, and that is electromagnetic assets. And these include electromagnetic systems that could optically, like a very advanced hologram, simulate an event, electromagnetic systems that have been called popularly electronic warfare systems that are psychotronic and radionic that interface with consciousness and thought, and electromagnetic systems that can affect large segments of the population when targeted. Now, these began to be developed quite in an advanced fashion by the 40s and 50s. And by 1956, it had been accomplished to the point of state-of-the-art. And then the other asset, the third category, is human intelligence, human assets. And these are folks who, some wittingly, some unwittingly, have been provided with a script and experiences that they honestly believe are real, but that have been programmed. Funding of this kind of research and development, both on extraterrestrial material and on other conventional, and the then augmentation of the conventional anti-gravity human with the extraterrestrial studied material, you can begin to realize that what's out there, that humans control, is fearsome and awesome. And unfortunately, to the lay person, or to the average general, admiral, or president, is indistinguishable from an extraterrestrial object in their mind. So that is really the danger point. There are extraterrestrial objects that look like and approximate the man-made ones. Now, you want to get a little more confused. Consider that if there's an extraterrestrial event that happens, they will then put up a man-made one, and they'll hoax a man-made event piggybacking on an extraterrestrial one, just to really confuse the picture. And Mr. Putin needs to know this. So there have been abduction squads that have been operative for decades. And when it has suited the intelligence community, they have engaged in human abductions that 100% fool those poor victims who really think they were abducted by an ET. And they weren't, but it sure looks like it. Now they have robotic ones that look actually like certain species of ETs, extraterrestrial biological entities in the EBINs. But they're man-made. I know several people who worked on making these creatures, and they've been called programmed life forms, but they have integrated circuits in their neural complex. They're 100% man-made, but they would absolutely fool 99.999999 to out to 100 decimal points. Now, am I saying that all people who have had contact with ETs have been abducted by humans? No. I'm saying, though, that if you have trillions of dollars and the kind of technologies I've been referring to, and you have the intent to masquerade and simulate an alien contact abduction event, you can do it. Back in 1994, I met a man who headed up a research and development effort in the 50s. And he had developed an electronic system so that you could put on a headset and alter anyone, not a trained psychic, but anyone, so that they could remote view through consciousness the field of mind any place on Earth. So after he developed it, the CIA set up a front company, I believe he called it Alphametric Corporation, that bought this technology and then took it in subterranean and has been developing it ever since. So he said, you know, we developed this so well that we can target somebody with an electromagnetic field that has embedded in it like a script or a hologram or a series of experiences, like a lucid dream. And that person will believe it's real, and it'll be indistinguishable from reality. We need to put together what I called for years ago a council on interplanetary relations that is devoted to peace and space, to the wise elders and youngsters of the planet, to work on this issue and deal with it openly. And this is something that is of the greatest import and urgency of anything in our lives. Because even if we bring out free energy and anti-gravity, but we live on this planet with the consciousness of division and hatred and warfare, that too will be weaponized. So that in and of itself isn't a solution. So this spiritual understanding of the essential oneness of life and the need for not just world peace, but universal peace, it's time. It's time for us to do that.